ဒီနေ့အစီအစဉ်ရောက်တဲ့အတိုင်းကာယဘုဒ္ဓဘာခိတိခံစားပုံပေါ်တယ်ဒီလိုတွေပြောပါမယ်တရားရှိမှတဲ့ယောဂီမှာဒီဘုနဲ့စပ်ပြီးတော့အလားအရာကျေပါတယ်သူကတော့တွေးတာစုကြည့်တဲ့နေရာဆန္ဒတိုင်းတွေးလို့တော့အရင်တော့ကလွယ်လို့ရှိတယ်စုကြည့်တဲ့နေရာဆန္ဒတိုင်းမှာသူ့သွားကြည့်လို့ရှိရင်ကြည့်တာပဲမာရလည်းကြည့်မာမတိကြောတာလည်းကြည့်ကြောမတိကျမ်းစာလည်းကြည့်ကျမ်းမတိလူတာလည်းကြည့်လူမတိပူဇာလို့ရအေးရတယ်ကြည့်ပူမတိဝေမတိအေမတိတောက်လာတင်လာလောက်တာနဲ့တော်တယ်တောက်မတိပြေမတိလောက်မတိဆိုတာပါအခန္ဓာဖြစ်တဲ့သာဘုရားကကိုယ်ကြည့်တဲ့ဒီဘလုံးကပြန့်နှံ့နေတာသူတို့ပြန့်နှံ့တဲ့ဌာနမှာခုနကြည့်လို့ရတဲ့အရာတွေသွားပြီးတော့ကြည့်လို့ရှိရင်မာရတိမာမတိကကြောတာဒီကြောမတိကဒီလိုမျိုးဖြစ်ဖြစ်သွားတယ်အဲဒီကိုယ်ကြည့်တော့မှကြည့်ရတဲ့ဘုဒ္ဓဘာသာယုံနဲ့သုံးတွေ့တဲ့သဘောပေါ့ဖတ်သဆိုတော့ဒီကြည့်တဲ့ဒီတွေ့ရတဲ့ဒီညတဲ့ဘုရားဟာလည်းကြည့်တွေ့လို့ရှိရင်တွေ့ကြည့်လို့ရှိရင်သက်တော့သက်သာဆံလို့ကောင်းတယ်ကျန်တဲ့အရာနဲ့ကြည့်လို့ရှိရင်မတက်မတာဖြစ်တဲ့ဆံလို့ကောင်းကြာအထီးအာရုံနဲ့တွေ့လိုက်လို့ရှိရင်လည်းကောင်းတယ်လည်းမဟုတ်ဘူးတွေ့တယ်လည်းမဟုတ်ဘူးဆိုတော့ခံစားမှုတစ်မျိုးပေါ်လို့ကြားခံစားမှုဖြစ်တယ်နန္တရားရေမှာလို့ရှိရင်ဖြစ်ပြီးဖို့ဖြစ်ပြီးဖို့ခံစားမှုဆိုတော့ဘာလို့ဒါလေးကိုသင်ကြားပါလဲဒီအခါအနန္တရားတွေလည်းပါပါသေးတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့လို့ယထာပဂတဥပဒနာပြီးပြီတော့ဆိုတဲ့အတိုင်းသင်ကြားတဲ့အာရုံလိုက်ဥပဒနာရှိပါပါတယ်အဲဒီအဆုံးမတင်တော့ရတာပဲဒီကူမောဘတ်ဆက်ပြီးတော့ဖောင်းလာတော့ပိန်လာတော့ထိုင်လာတော့ကြည့်လာတော့ကြွားလာတော့မှန်းလာချလာတော့မြတ်တော်ခတ်တော့လည်းပိတ်တော့ဖွင့်လာတာအစသူကလည်းပတ်သက်တဲ့အရာတွေဒီကဒီနာအရာကျေပါတယ်သူတို့အဲဒါဒီနေ့သာဓုနဲ့လက်တွေ့ပေါင်းစပ်ပြီးတော့ရှင်းလင်းသင်ကြပါမယ်
Today, the topic will be touch, the experience of touch. Kaya prasada, Panditabhivamsa, and the knowing of the touch. Sayadawgyi said he would speak about this yesterday. In the meditating yogis, the experience of touch is a very, very broad category. Touch can be experienced all over the body, where there's blood flowing or where there's moisture, except for the hard and dry areas like nails. So if you touch any part of the body that is, except for those dry, hard areas, if the body is touched there with something hard, there will be the knowing of the hardness. If the body is touched with something soft, then there will be knowing the softness. Something being touched with something coarse, one will know that coarseness. Being touched with something gentle, one will know the gentle quality. when there's a touch by something that is hot or warm or cold, one will know the heat or the warmth or the coldness. When the body is touched somewhere with something stiff or tense or moving, one will know the qualities of stiffness, tension, or movement. So in the experience of touch, the receptor element is called kaya prasada, and it's the body. It's the body base where there is some type of moisture. And when the tangible object, something substantial, strikes the body base, then if, for example, it's something hard, one will know the hardness. If it's something stiff, one will know the stiffness. So the knowing of the object arises. And there will be also the meeting of the mind and the tangible object. This is called touching contact. And when there's a touch contact with a gentle object, then it feels good to experience. When there's a contact with something that is rough or coarse, it won't feel pleasant to experience. And then there can be touch of objects that feel neither good nor bad, and neutral feeling occurs. So among the mental phenomena that arise at the moment of touching, knowing the tangible object, touch consciousness, contact, and feeling are the obvious elements. There are others present, but because the principle in Vipassana is yatha prakatan, vipassana dinideso, that we have to begin our observation in Vipassana with the object which is obvious or evident. So other ways that touch can be experienced are when in observation of the rising, the falling, sitting, touching, lifting, moving, placing, and even down to minute actions such as blinking or opening and closing the eyes. These are all within the category of touch, experiencing touch. So today Sayadawgyi will explain this in terms of both theory and practice.
So see the tattva raima li jiwara jiwa. Shutulate li whatever li thowara jiwa. Shutulate li out haru namiya. Shubene out haru namiya. Shiva saya pada jiwa. Saya shiva sama li wendara. The Congress started to win on the TV teaching the Congress of the entire town area as well. And then they went outside the Congress here in the town area. Because of that, the Congress of the town area. Jama only for the teaching. The country of Bugoria on the Hawa. The country of Bugoria, the Kanga upon the Kanga Saudi. Sedimat, the put it on the court when it was the year. When you told it to a senior. But you said, when out, how to see it. The Lumia to Pimana, the Sigina, Sigina, Kurega, Yamida Toku, all Hallelujah, Yamida Tokanada, Sekanada. So that she will say her. She will say, take them. People are there to that thing. ဒီစိတ်ကလေးခြေလိုက်ဆက်တိုင်းမှာပေါ့လေအဲ့ဒီလေလေးတွေဝင်လိုက်ထွက်လိုက်ဖြစ်နေတာသူ့ကိုသိနေလို့ရှိရင်နှာခေါင်းရှိတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဆိုရင်နှာပြီးဘဝဆောက်နှာခေါင်းတူတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်လို့ရှိရင်နှာခေါင်းဘဝဆောက်ခံရတာပဲအဲ့ဒါခြေလိုက်ဆက်တဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေမှာဒီလိုပဲစလို့ရတာပဲဒီကတော့
Yeah. The town say that for the Matayam, the Nasika. Oh, did I? Okay. So, all beings which have lungs need to breathe air. And once one has inhaled and breathed in the air, then one has to expel it. One has to push it back out again. One can't hold the breath once one has breathed in. And one also cannot refrain from breathing. One can't not inhale. One has to inhale. And so because of this, inhaling and exhaling occurs. When the inhalation happens, then air enters in, starting at the nostrils. It comes into the body. And if one wants to know this, one puts the attention at the nostrils and keeps it there for the full length of the inhalation. And if one wants to observe the exhalation, again, one needs to put one's attention at the nostrils and then keep the attention there all the way to the end of the exhalation. And people with long noses need to focus their attention more on the sides of the nose, whereas the people with short noses should put their attention right at the entrance of the nostrils. And the inhalation and exhalation occurs. If we don't do it, if we hold the breath, keep ourselves from breathing in or breathing out in time, we will tire, it will not feel good, and we'll want to breathe in. So then there will be breathing in, and the air will come into the body. And then we also can't hold it at that point. If we hold it, it'll feel uncomfortable, and then there will be the desire to exhale, and then exhalation will occur. So it's obvious that inhalation and exhalation, breathing in and breathing out, happen due to the mind. They're caused by the mind. And this is so the air coming in and out needs to be observed at the nostrils, as Sayadawgyi mentioned. And this is how one does it at the start.
Omega, only when I feel like we have to look at it on the whole. To look at it at the start. One of my opponents when I feel that they are the new one. So to look at it on the whole. The common to look, the common is the one of you. But 30 years old. To live in study, to live in the same. So that is the word to have it, the younger people. Say the little bucket. Say the little home, those who said in the bucket. That's the one you know. Not that we are a home who started to fire and a little to do the Yahoo. So the least of you must say, you know, home people they have. Upa one will be there for Pani. We are remote. Upa, we are the but they are liver. We come near them a Pani that to be a sister. To be a sister, took up this take the other. You should see into what is a title, none to see none to what is a title. To what is a title, they are PR, we used to see hope with the took company union to the time. To what is a paisa, should be the paisa, that's all we are. Make that cover. Area to make time. To put a such a home, you do what is a title, the area of Pani, that's it all. To what is my affairs and another. Seven is such a thing to live. So now, Upa one way. Why not sit with a holo? To be a sicker, you be a sister, do what is a Pani, that's it all. To let my idea to the body. Serado, Yogi and Lali Fire. When I then hold up in a Sarena Bow. Sarena Bow, how Father look at Jalida. If you have Mamma, Malatu, you want and the other, let's get up on it. You want and the Amatia also for you. Sadhuna say our body, late of Yoga at the Upa one will leave out to the body for Piavare. How like saying like slow of things are there. Charlie, the doctor and not to shower. The sea would have been of Yavo.
The air of the abdomen rising and falling is not the inhalation, it is not the exhalation, it is something different. It is another kind of air, but it is not unconnected with the inhalation and the exhalation. The air goes in through the nostrils when one inhales, and it reaches the abdomen. And when the air is exhaled, breathed out, the air goes out. The abdominal air also moves. So it is the movement of the abdomen, the air that is involved in the movement of the abdomen is not the in-breath, it's not the out-breath, but it is not separate from these. It's not unconnected from these. The Buddha didn't say specifically that we should observe the rising and the falling of the abdomen, but it is said there are 6 kinds of air in the body, and so this air that we observe is, when we observe the rising and the falling, is the air in the abdomen. It's the air that is not inside the intestines. It's outside of the intestines, within the abdomen. And this air is a true material quality. It is truly rupa. And it is also the truth of suffering, dukkha sata. If something is a true physical quality or a true mental quality, then it is the truth of suffering. It is dukkha sata. And if we know the truth of suffering, then we are doing as the Buddha instructed when he said, dukkhang parinyayang, that the truth of suffering is to be known. So air of the rising, the air connected with the rising, the air of the rising is connected with the inhalation, and this is the truth of suffering. This is dukkha. And the falling occurs in connection with the exhalation. This is also truly the air element, biodhatu. It is the air that is within the abdomen. So we need to observe it. And the yogis should understand this. Sometimes people think it's not present in the text, it's not said specifically. Is this type of observation really true? And in order to dispel this doubt, Sayadawgyi is explaining about how the air that we observe is one of the types of air. It is the air within the abdomen. And the qualities of stiffness and tension and movement that are obvious, these are what the air is. And this is obvious and cannot be denied.
Only below the city that doesn't say Leoha. One of my teacher for a mulu. One of my only in the city that mulu. To see that another somewhere. Woman mother said her. Found a lot of people found there. Think about it, think about it. You see the area. So what I want to see is a liar to a stone never. What is a liar? My two books start to keep over. You know what? Open what you are everywhere. To let us have done a student of the pound is a poeta. Said that I come up to who are for a kiddo, the woman of the air. To the air liar, Canada, was some of the easily, but some to the other. Outside the some to the other. Well, I never had a show. They don't know that. Usually stop without the doctor phone and see what it is. And you need to found it. But who never usually put that of the phone or the thing? You need to. That is the Kalama. You need to talk to the Mama. Somebody said about it. So those are the least alone. But then photo video body. Live I have no way. Now the lomo, Kali, the Santo to the leader. 6 months, my own. So I don't say about it. Good or 6 years, but we are Sunday for it. So let's do yoga level. Santo to the Mafia of the seat of the world. And what Sunday? Sunday, you have to my founding bring a lawyer. You will let somewhere after it. How long did you say about put it after it? Say, I'll never say here. A Sunday, see me up. How the Lara will be here at Manana. We got around the movie at Manana. A Sunday, something around you. All the other is the yoga outside one level to how you cut your Lolo. You will do good to the Alexia about it. Say, the yogi, American, the Alexia, that is Usman and Brahma. A little in the yard, how the next human nature. So you got on the next human nature. But what is our religion over?
the stiffness, tension, movement of the rising and the falling becomes apparent in the abdomen. It occurs in the abdomen. So we have to put our attention there and wait. We have to be ready for the rising. We have to be ready for the falling. If we have the job of greeting an important visitor, then we have to go to the place where the visitor will enter. And the rising and falling are like a visitor in our body. When the inhalation occurs, the rising arises. When the exhalation occurs, the falling arises. These are like visitors. We have to go to where they will occur, to be ready for them. So, we have to be ready for them when they come with effort and with aiming. So as soon as there's the first glimpse of the rising, one has to apply the label, rising, and observe it all the way till the end. As soon as there's the smallest glimpse of the falling, one has to apply effort and follow this falling movement to the end and use the label of falling. At the start of the practice, if we label the objects that we see, then it's easy for samadhi concentration to arise. It's like a school child learning how to spell. They start out by learning the alphabet and learning to spell, and this has to be done aloud. Here, we note silently, but some yogis will be instructed to note aloud. It happens sometimes. So, every rising, every falling, so as not to miss what happens, one has to apply one's effort and apply aiming. Only if one is ready to observe will one be able to note the rising and note the falling effectively. That is, right when they happen. If there is no ardent effort, if one is not alert and active, then one won't be able to observe. It can't be done in a careless or slack way. And aiming must also be present. So we have to do this. We have to apply ardent effort and aiming. And as we do it many times, we become skilled. And becoming skilled, one will be able to observe the object accurately. We will be able to see it correctly. So what we need to do at the outset, at the beginning, is to develop this skill.
The Kauna is to that one by my son came to us here. Second children, they in Goa. So this of Saturday. There are Palizo, Wayo, Jatu, later, what the little later. You be there, my do a two years old, I put a two go. Put up on the sober, Wayo put up a leave to you, whatever. Two seven expect the people that they to you. Very leave to you got one better than no more piano with it. Go, you don't know, take up for it. The minimum piano with it, go, you don't know, conduct for it. Every conduct. So this is this was it. Why you put up by you? So you take it as put it as Palmati, Pagmati, Pagmati, Pemati, Luchamati. There are 50 covers. one person put up on the same somewhere. Which he called it. Bama Kazaja, a few things in Malu, material Kanzam who is a kid or all. The Karaga, teacher at Sama, Kanamukongo, the Karaga, sit on the Sure at Sama, Kankong at the body, Kazaka teacher of Kara. Oh, Napaja at Kazara, sit on the Kali, you are used to the take it up the end of the Lord is the other stuff, and teach people, teach Kanzam. The Landia, the Punta cover. Without powder to them, Kanda Saita Punta Dia. You dear Landia, Machiu, Yellow, Matinja, Yellow. The Santa Gita Santa Gita to it. The Kandana Taja Lubia, Kiki Kandara Nadia, Kiki Lubia and Nadia Tinsania. The Congress of them Lubia Nadia Tinsania. Every time I see it, the Nancy also it. To be an idea of keeping it here. To sit out the service my body. I would have said, I said, that I do. Certainly, I see my brother to see about it.
With every breathing in at the nostrils, in the abdomen, there's rising or stiffness and tension, movement. And when there's breathing out, then the abdomen, this tension dies down. And this is the air element called Sayadawgyi in Pali. It is a tangible object. It's substantial. It can be touched. So it is called Sayadawgyi. It is the tangible air element. And it occurs in connection with the inhalation and the exhalation. When there's inhalation and exhalation, this tangible air element strikes the body base which is spread throughout the body. And at that time one knows the rising, one knows the falling, or one knows stiffness, or tension, or movement. This knowing is called touch consciousness, knowing of the tangible object. The mind and the tangible object are meeting at the body base, and this is called touch contact. If there's no special feeling, then that's a type of feeling, neutral feeling. But sometimes, when it's hard to breathe, then it feels uncomfortable. And sometimes, when it's very easy to breathe, then it feels pleasant. And when the breath is very subtle, also the feeling can be quite subtle. So, at this time, there's knowing, touch consciousness, touch contact, and feeling connected with touch. And this is a group of mental qualities. And this is the spark element that happens at the moment of touching. So in the rising and in the falling, there are these three elements of the receptor or base, the striker, and the spark. These are really there. And if one experiments, one will find them. The base, the body, and the substantial object, these two parts are physical. And the knowing, contact, and feeling are mind. So at the time of rising, there's just two things happening. Rupa and Nama, matter and mind, these two are obvious. And if one wants to know the mind and matter that are really there at the moment of rising and falling, then one has to observe every time the abdomen rises and falls without an effort and aim in order to collect the mind. The moment the rising occurs, apply effort, aim, steadfastly observe. The moment the falling occurs, apply effort, aim, and steadfastly observe. The rising and the falling, these are the movements of the abdomen, and to say the moment of the rising occurs, that means at the very present moment, while it is happening. We can't observe it before it's risen, and we can't observe it after it's risen. We have to observe it while the rising is happening. When the rising happens, we have to apply energy. And that means that we have to push the mind so that it reaches this object of observation called the rising. And there also has to be aiming, the quality of vitakka. That means to apply the mind so that it is focused on the object. So there has to be the energy of pushing the mind to the object, and there also has to be the energy of aiming the mind. So it's the same with the falling. As soon as the falling happens, one has to apply effort and aiming every second of the time without a break. And even though no knowledge has arisen, if we can observe, say, 3 or 4 times in a row, if we can apply aiming and effort so that the mind is meeting the object accurately, then sati will arise. In just that 3 or 4 notings, sati can arise, and the mind will stick to the object. When the mind sticks to the object with sati, then it falls collectively on the object moment by moment, and samadhi, concentration, arises. So there's no need to deliberately try to create sati or samadhi. One has to simply be accurate when one tries to observe the object. That means that we have to aim the mind, and we have to get the mind there to where the object is. So that means we have to apply art and effort. And sometimes we'll be able to see the object exactly 3 or 4 times, or sometimes maybe 5 or 6 times in a row. Sometimes maybe 1 minute at a time. We can be observing the object precisely. And even though knowledge has not yet arisen at that time, no greed is present. There's no lobha in the mind. Nor is there any dosa, any anger arising together with the mind. The mind is free of lobha and dosa. It's clean and pure. So although there is no knowledge arising yet, this is the bhavana mind, this clean mind. And this is the profit that we gain at the start of the practice.
ဒီလိုဆက်ဆံရတော့ဘောင်းပြုမှုကတော့ဒီရကံလိုရှိနေတာပဲသို့တော့အဲ့ဒီနောက်ကိုလိုက်ပြီးတော့ဒီလိုဆက်ဆံမှတ်ပြီးရပါဖို့ဆိုပြီးပြောရတယ်ပါဖို့ဆိုတာကပါလဲပါရမယ်ဒီသတ်တာလို့ရှိရမယ်ရှိဆက်ဆက်တော့ပေါက်တယ်လာတယ်ရှိမှတ်တယ်ပိတ်တတ်တော့နောက်ပေါင်းနောက်ပြင်လည်းဆိုပြီးတော့စိတ်ဆက်ဆက်သမတ်သမတ်ဆက်နေရမယ်အသိကြီးရှိရတယ်သမတ်သမတ်ဆက်နေပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဆွေးနွေးလာတာပဲအားသေးတဲ့အရာဝတ္ထုဟာတစ်ခုချင်းနည်းနည်းလေးတွေ့လို့ရှိရင်တော့ဘာမှအရာမရောက်ဘူးမယ်လို့အဲဒီအားရတဲ့အရာတွေကတစ်ခုနဲ့တစ်ခုနိစ္စပူပတ်သွားပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဒီတဲကအောက်ကိုခေါင်းလောက်အောင်ပဲသွန်းအားတွေထွက်လာတာပေါင်းနေပေါင်းနေပြင်နေဆက်တော့မှတ်နိုင်ပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဒီတဲကအောက်ကိုခေါင်းလောက်စိတ်သားသွန်းအားတွေထွက်လာတာပဲစိတ်ကမြေခိုက်ပြီးတော့ရှိပြီးမှတ်နိုင်မနိုင်ဖို့လေမှတ်နိုင်အောင်လည်းအဲ့ဒါလေးထားတယ်စိတ်ကပြီးမှတ်ရတယ်ဒီတော့မိမိတို့အထုပ်ပုံပြောပြတဲ့အခါမှာဘုံပိုက်ဆိုင်ပြီးတော့ဘုံပြင်ဖို့ကိုဆရာစိတ်ရှင်းတတ်ကြပြီးတော့မကလမဟုတ်ဘူးလားဒါတာဝန်ပဲစိတ်ဆက်မှတ်နိုင်တယ်လားမနိုင်ဘူးလားဆိုတာပေါ့လေသွန်အားလည်းပဲဆရာကြီးကပြရပါတယ်အဲ့ဒါကိုကိုယ်ကယူသားတာနဲ့ပြောပြပါတယ်ကိုမတွေ့တဲ့ဟာလည်းမပြောရဘူး ကိုမသိတဲ့ဟာလည်းမပြောရဘူးလက်တွေ့ဒီနေရာမှာလက်တွေ့ပြောရတာကိုပြောတော့
Every time there's inhalation and exhalation, the breathing in and the breathing out, there is the rising and the falling. It's always there. But it's very important for sati to be present when it is happening. And this sati has to be applied meticulously so that one moment of sati occurs after another without a gap. This is very important because when one moment of sati follows another without a gap in between, then our observation becomes steadfast. It becomes firmly established. And it's because although one moment of sati is weak, if you take something that individually is weak, but you put them together, put many of them together so that they're all combined, they can become very, very strong, amazingly strong. And if one is able to observe so that one can be aware of every rising, every falling, then mental energy will become amazingly strong. So one has to this is why one of the things one should be able to speak about with the teacher is, are you able to observe the object continuously and effectively? When one speaks about one's practice, one has to say what one is able to do. So are you able to observe the object with effort and aim? That's one thing to think about. Can you observe it with effort and aim? And are you able to observe the object effectively so that the observation is connected one after another? Because when it is contiguous, it will be effective. So one has to say honestly what is happening. One should not say something that one has not seen. One should not say or speak about something that one does not know. One has to say what one actually experiences.
ဒီလိုစိတ်တိုင်းကတော့ဟောဘက်ကအောင်းလိုက်ပြင်လဲဆိုတာသူ့အတူဖြစ်နေတာပဲကိုယ်အလုပ်လို့ဖြစ်တာမဟုတ်ဘူးကိုယ်အလုပ်လို့ဖြစ်တာမဟုတ်တဲ့ကိုယ်နဲ့ဘာမှမဆိုင်ဘူးကောင်းလည်းလုပ်ဖို့လို့ပြောင်းလည်းလုပ်ဖို့လို့သူကလည်းသိတယ်ကုတုံကဘာလဲဆိုတော့သူဖြစ်တဲ့ပုံမှန်ဘူးကောင်းလည်းကောင်းတယ်ပြင်လည်းပေါ့ဒါကယောဂီတောင်းတယ်အာရုံပေါ်ပဲဆရာဆက်ဆက်လည်းမလို့ပြောတော့ဆက်လက်ဆက်ပြီးတော့လည်းဆိုကိုတောင်းကောင်းမှုပေါ်ပဲဆရာဆက်ဆက်လိုက်ဘုရားပေါ်ပဲဆရာဆက်ဆက်လိုက်တာဆောင်းရသတိရှိဖို့စိတ်ရှိသတ်လို့ပြောမှတ်နိုင်တယ်ဆိုရင်မှတ်နိုင်ပါကဒီကများတဲ့လုံးဝမအောင်ပြောမမှန်ပြောပါတယ်ဟောတဲ့လာတာတွေကိုဆရာဆက်သင်သားကြီးကိုမှတ်နိုင်တယ်ဆိုရင်ပါတိသွားတယ်လို့ဝမ်းတို့ကိုသိကြရလားခေါင်းတော်ကိုသိကြရလားပညာကိုသိကြရလားသုံးဖို့တောင်းသွားတော့တင်းသွားတော့ဆိုတခုတော့ပြောရမှာတော့ဒီသိရတယ်ကြည့်ပြီးတော့မြင်တဲ့ဟာမပြောနိုင်လို့ရှိရင်ဒါသဘောမကျဘူးကိုယ့်ရဲ့မျက်မှောက်မှာတရားရောက်တာပေါ့လေဒီတစ်ခုထောင်ပြလိုက်လို့ရှိတဲ့ကဘာပဲဆိုတော့စစ်စစ်တဲဝဲတာပဲစစ်စစ်ကြည့်တာဒါလိုပဲဝိုင်းမဆိုင်ပြီးတော့ပေါင်းတက်လာတာတော့ကိုယ်တော်ကမှားရမယ်မှတ်နိုင်တဲ့ဆောင်းရည်ကောင်းလို့ရမယ်မှတ်နိုင်တယ်ဆိုရင်ဘာလဲ မျက်မှောက်မှာရောက်လာတဲ့ဟာပါလဲဆိုတော့စစ်စစ်ကြောင်းနေတာဘုံမှလည်းတဲ့ဆရာကဘာသိသွားတယ်လဲဘာပဲကြည့်ကိုသိသွားတာလားကိုသိတယ်ပြောရမှာပါဖောင်းလာကိုသိသွားတာလားပင်နာသိတာဒီလောက်လားပူသွားတာလားလွေးသွားတာလားအေးသွားတာလားတခုခုသာပြောရမှာကိုသိတဲ့ဟာကိုပြောရမှာနော်ဒါသိရေးကြည့်ရတယ်ကွာအမှန်တော့သိပါတယ်သူကတရားအလုံးသိရင်အပြောလေးရှင်းလာတယ်သူကပြင်ရတာလည်းရှင်းပါတယ်မှတ်နိုင်ပါလားသိတဲ့ကလုံးဝမှအောင်ပြောပါဓမ္မသုတ်တန်းဆရာများရတယ်ဒါကြလို့ရိုးသားသားနဲ့သင်ပြတဲ့ယောဂီကိုအခုယူပြနိုင်ပါလေမပုံလည်းစက်ကလည်းကောင်းလည်းမမှတ်ပေါ်တာလည်းပဲသိစက်လည်းမရှိခင်းရည်လျှောက်ပြောလို့ရှိရင်တော့အဲ့ဒီယောဂီရောသုတ်တန်းဆရာများကလျှောက်ပြရတာပေါ့ခုရရဖြစ်ပါတယ်ဒီနေရာမှာရိုးသားကိုသိနေရှိပါတယ်မှတ်နိုင်ကြမှာသိပညာမြင်လာပြောပါတဲ့အခုမြင်တဲ့ဟာမမြင်တဲ့ဟာတော့သိကူးနဲ့မပြောရဘူးနော်ပုံမှန်မူရသဘာဝသုံးစာနားလို့ဒီကြောက်ပုံရသိမှကသိတာပြောနေကိုယ်ဝါဘုကပုံဟာတော့သံဌာနဆိုပုံဟာမူရဆိုတာကောင်းတဲ့သိရတာအမူအရာဆိုတဲ့အာကာရအဲ့ဒီထဲမှာအစ်စ်သွားနေတာတောင်းတာကျင်းတာလှုပ်တာရော့တော့ကျင်းလာတာလေးပေါ့ဒါကြီးကသဘာဝခေါ်ရတယ်အဲ့ဒီသုံးမျိုးတွေကဘာတိသွားတယ်လဲဝမ်းမဲ့ပုံကြီးတိသွားတာလားခေါင်းနဲ့ပြင်းအချင်းရာတိတာလားတော့ဘုံတောင်းတာကိုသိတာကျင်းတာကိုသိတာလှုပ်တာကိုသိတာဆိုတာကိုသိမြင်တဲ့အတိုင်းရိုးသားတာပြောဖို့သိရကြည့်ပါလားဒါမှသမထဆရာများဒီလိုလုပ်ပြောပါတယ်မှတ်နိုင်မှာသိတဲ့ကလုံးဝမှောင်ပြောမမှတ်နိုင်ဘူးဆိုရင်မမှတ်နိုင်တာဖြစ်တဲ့မြတ်မှတ်ရသိလို့ပြောဒီထဲမှာသိရဘူးသိထွက်တယ်ထွက်တဲ့စိတ်သိသလားမှတ်သလားမှတ်ရင်ဒီထွက်တဲ့စိတ်ဘာဖြစ်သွားလဲဘုံဘုံနည်းနည်းလေးထိုင်တာကြတော့ခန္ဓာကိုယ်အစိတ်ပိုင်းဟိုနာဒီနာကညောင်းတာလေးဆက်တာလေးဆဲတာလေးတခုပေါ်တယ်ပေါ်လာတဲ့ဆက်မှတ်နိုင်ဟောညောင်းတာမှတ်တယ်ဘာဖြစ်လဲဒီညောင်းတာမရတဲ့တိုးညောင်းတာကတတ်နေတော့ကျေသွားလားကြောက်သွားလားဒါပြောရမယ်ဒီကိစ္စစားဖို့လေဒီမှာမတည်လို့ပြီးတော့လောဘတွေဖြစ်နေတယ်ဒေါသတွေဖြစ်နေတယ်ဖြစ်လာတာမှတ်တယ်လားမဟုတ်လားမှတ်ရင်ဘာဖြစ်သွားလဲပြောရမယ်ဒီမှာမနှောင်ရဖြစ်တယ်ရတယ်ဖြစ်တယ်ပေါ်တယ်မှတ်ရပုံကြည့်ပုံနဲ့ပြောပြပါတဲ့ဒါယောဂီများတာဝန်ရှိပါတယ်ဒီမှာအယုဂံတိုင်းကိုမှတ်ပုံနဲ့ကိုခံစားရပုံကြည့်ပုံလေးတွေပြောပြလို့ရှိရင်သမထဆရာများအဲ့ဒီယောဂီကိုသိကျင်တယ်ဒီယောဂီကျော်တယ်ဆရာတော်ကသူမှတ်တဲ့အတိုင်းသူတွေ့တဲ့အတိုင်းရိုးသားသားပြောလို့ရတယ်အဲဒီယောဂီကသမထဆရာအကူကြီးပေးရတာလည်းသိလို့ရတာသိပြီးရှိပါတယ်ဒီလိုတရားနဲ့ဆက်ပြီးတော့သိကြတဲ့အကူကြီးတို့ကြီးဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ယောဂီများကိုယ်ဘက်ကလည်းသိပြီးရှိပါတယ်ကိုယ်ဘက်ကအသင်္ကြန်နဲ့ဖြစ်ဖို့သိပြီးရှိပါတယ်အခုပြောခဲ့တဲ့အစီအစဉ်တိုင်းအစီအစဉ်ရှိထားဖို့
With every inhalation and every exhalation, the rising and the falling occur. They occur on their own. It's nothing to do with us. There's no need to do anything to make them happen. Our job is simply to observe what is there as it is, rising as rising, falling as falling. As soon as the object arises, can you stick with it and observe it? If you can observe it, say what it is that you come to know. Say what it is that you come to know completely. If at the moment of rising or falling, you can observe it, what is it that you know? Do you see the form of the abdomen, or the expansion or collapsing, or do you experience stiffness, tension, movement, relaxation? If you look but you don't see something, this is not realistic. This is not natural. If someone were to come and put something, some material thing in front of you, and you look at it, you will know immediately. You will see it immediately. So the rising arises, and the yogi's job is to observe it. If you can observe it, what is it that you feel or see? What is it you know? Is it the abdomen? Then you say, I'm aware of the abdomen. I see the abdomen. If what is apparent is the expansion, the rising, this much I'm aware of. Or aware of the falling. This is what I'm aware of. Or does it get cold, or does it get hot? So one has to say what it is that one comes to know when one watches the rising and the falling. The Dhamma is very clear, and if one's work is clear, what one has to say when one speaks about one's meditation to the teacher will be very clear. And this is all these instructions are given in order to help the yogi. So if one does not apply the method of practice and also does not say what one actually does, if one doesn't, if one just makes things up, if one doesn't say what is actually happening, then it's very difficult for the teachers to help the yogi. So it's important not to say what one doesn't see. So there's three levels, as Sayadawgyi mentioned. Just to say again, there's three levels on which we see when we look at matter. And one is the form, santana in Pali, and one is the manner or position, that's called akara, such as expanding, collapsing, rising, falling. And another is qualities like stiffness or tension or movement. These are called true nature or sabhava. So we see in one of these three ways when we look in meditation. So of these three ways, which is it that you know at the time you observe? So you should say it the way you see it, because only then will the teacher be able to help you. So if you're not able to observe the rising or the falling, then say what happened. The mind wandered. Okay, the mind wandered. Did you note it? When you noted it, what happened? Just say. Or, one has been sitting for a while, aches arise, pains, stiffness, numbness. So you say, this arose. Did you note it? What happened when you noted it? Did it become solid? Did it become soft? Or anger arose? Or greed arose? Did you note it? What happened to it? So you should say how you observe in the meditation, and this is the yogi's job. If you say according to what you see, experience, and according to what you cannot see, if you say what you are able to note and what you are not able to note, the teacher will be very satisfied. If the yogis, when the yogis tell exactly how they work and what they see, then the teachers are very satisfied and they feel this yogi is a really good yogi because they are speaking so clearly. So if you want to receive help from the teachers, then you have to fulfill your own part of the task.
သုံးဆန်းဆရာများကယောဂီရဲ့အကျိုးစီးပွားကိုကောင်းကောင်းနားလည်ပြီးတော့အခုလိုမှတ်ရဖို့သိဆက်ဆက်မှတ်ရဖို့မှတ်တဲ့အခါမှာဒီလိုအကျိုးတွေရဖို့အကျိုးတွေကြပြီးတော့ညွှန်ကြားရပါတယ်ဒီနကယူသူတွေလုပ်လို့ရှိရင်အဲဒီယောဂီတွေသိကျင်တတ်ပါတယ်ခိုင်ပြီးတော့ဘုလိုဖုံးပိန်မှုအစခပ်ဖို့ခါရောပေါ်လို့တော်တော်ရောလုပ်တဲ့ယောဂီတွေဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တော့ကျိုးကြတာလည်းပဲဖုံးနဲ့ပိန်နဲ့ကမှတ်ပေါ်မတူးတော့ကျန်တဲ့အစိတ်ပိုင်းတွေပေါ့လေညတောက်တဲ့အခါသူတို့မူရည်မှတ်တဲ့အခါမှာလည်းပို့ဖို့ပဲလုပ်တော့တာပါပဲတစ်ပတ်ကနှစ်ပတ်ကသုံးပတ်တစ်လယုတ်တိတာကြာညောင်းသွားတယ်ပေါ့လေဘာမှမဖြစ်ဘူးသတိယောဂီမျိုးတော့ကမ္မထဆရာများကစိတ်ကလေးတိုက်တော့ပြောလည်းရမှာမဟုတ်တော့ဘူးစိတ်ကလေးတိုက်တော့ဒီတော့ငါရောက်ပြီးတော့အထုတ်တယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ယောဂီကြည်တာထောင်းလိုက်တာဆိုင်နဲ့စာဖုံးလို့တော့ယူတည်မှတ်လို့ကျိုးတဲ့ဘုရားကြီးရှိလာပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဉာဏ်နဲ့ဉာဏ်တောက်တဲ့အခါရက်တဲ့အခါသာဒီပေါ်ဒီအစုံမူရတယ်လည်းပဲမလို့ရဘူးလို့လုပ်တော့တာပါပဲအဲဒီလိုဒီလိုလုပ်တဲ့ယောဂီကအမတ်တွေစိတ်လာလို့ရှိရင်သက္ကနာလေးပဲပြညာလေးသူခြားခြားဖြစ်ပေါ်လာတတ်ပါလေအဲလိုသူခြားခြားဖြစ်ပေါ်နေတော့နောက်နေ့ကျမှပဲဆက်ပြီးတော့ပြောမှာပဲဒီနေ့ကတော့ပညာကြီးပြည့်သွားတော့ဒါနဲ့ဆိုတော့ကြာဥစ္စာ
The meditation teachers understand very well what is good for the yogis, and therefore they're speaking about, as Sayadawgyi is now, about how to observe and what benefits arise. So they have to instruct the yogis in this way. And if the yogis do as instructed, then the teachers are very satisfied. If on the other hand, a yogi is careless about observing the rising and falling in sitting, if the yogi doesn't pay attention to it, if the yogi just does what they like, then their walking meditation and their observation of general activities will also be careless. So, whether it's done a matter of days or weeks or months, if one works carelessly, then there won't be any difference no matter how long one takes. And a yogi like this, the teachers will ignore. The teachers will not pay attention to such a yogi. So if you came here to practice, and then do as instructed, and if you observe the rising, if someone applies the instructions, observing the rising and falling carefully, then comes to gain benefit, and there comes to be benefits, results from this, then surely one will do the walking and the general activities carefully. So such a yogi who applies themselves like this, when their notings become continuous, then special knowledge arises very quickly. How this special knowledge arises will be discussed tomorrow. This is all for today.